When it is Saturday, you know how we do it. Welcome to the show. Heal Me Youth Connect.
For a boy to become a man,
Yes.
there must be a man to see something in that boy and bring it out. What a man can do.
A woman can do even better.
So what is the man supposed to do then?
When it is Saturday, you know how we do it. Welcome to the show. Heal Me Youth Connect. Today you're going to have a wonderful, wonderful show. And therefore I want you to call your friend and let them subscribe at Mentor Paul Wangari and let us learn together. Ensure you have a pen and a notebook because this is where you get to learn all about matters to do with the heart. And we are going to discuss today is about Boychild. How can we restore the glory of the lost boy child, the lost man? And that's why today I have a wonderful, wonderful guest here with us. And this man is not just a friend, but he's also a brother, a close brother to me. And also, coincidentally, we share the same name. Mr. Paul,
Yes, sir.
welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
It's an honor to have you today.
My pleasure.
Well.
Thank you.
You know, I'm so excited
Oh, yes.
to have you here today because we are going to discuss about a very weighty issue, you know, because boy child has been under siege for so long.
Sure.
And this is not just crochet because people, that's what they're saying. But the reality is that boy child is in a situation, in a space that is not very safe for him.
Oh, yes.
And today we are here to be able to help our viewers, to be able to understand where is this boy child, you know, and then so that we're able then to help him to become even much better.
Yeah,
Now,
sure.
Mr. Paul, karibu sana.
Asante
Now,
sana.
I want we start the show and to ask you, is there hope for the boy child?
Oh yes, Mr. Wangari. Definitely there is hope for the boy child. And the hope can be seen
Yes.
in the many successful stories we have seen about men,
Yes.
both young and aging.
Yes.
And of course, because I have read your books, you're one such person who can inspire hope to the boy child and depict a picture that there's definitely a lot of hope in boy child. And of course, reading your story from the way you overcame adversities
Yes.
from children's home, rising all the way to becoming a senior and one of the most sought after counseling psychologists and youth mentor in Kenya
It's an honor.
is something that inspires confidence, and we can truly attest that there is hope for the boy child.
Wow.
Oh, yes.
And also looking at the number of projects that are happening around the country right now to empower the boy child. Do you feel that they are also part of the hope in the current generation, helping the boy child to become a man or a better man?
Oh, yeah, I'll say yes. The kind of projects going on and events suggest that, of course, there is a lot of effort to restore the dignity of the boy child. But then again, we cannot bury our heads in the sand like the proverbial ostrich.
Yes.
We must begin by acknowledging there is a problem with the boy child, and that is why there is deliberate effort
Yes.
to bring back the glory of the boy. Case in point, we have the issue of the government fighting illicit alcohol.
Yes.
And of course, we know the issue of alcoholism is affecting mainly the boy child, both young men and the aging.
Yes.
No one has been spared in this thing, Paul. I know you know that.
Absolutely. It's very saddening. Yes.
Yes, but unfortunately, the ones who have been most hit is the boy child.
Yes.
The men, especially the young ones who are supposed to be productive. And so when we see such efforts by the government,
Yes.
we must appreciate there's a problem and an effort to correct the same problem. Again, we have initiatives, for example, by the second lady.
Wow. And we want to actually salute her for the good job that she's doing.
Amazing, absolutely. And that is also something that is being done to mentor the boy child and
Yes.
of course to restore in a big way his dignity and glory and position, of course,
Yes.
in the society.
Wow,
Yes.
wow. I'm happy to hear that because people have had reached a point whereby they had lost hope, you know, looking at the boy child and the trajectory or the path that he's walking at. It was quite worrying, you know. I remember seeing some time back in our news or in our televisions, and some ladies, you know, demonstrating, you know, saying how the boy child is getting lost, how they don't have husbands, It was very sad, a very sad picture. You know, but we have said something very important, Mr. Paul, that we cannot be like that proverbial ostrich. We cannot hide our head in the sand and assume that all is well. Though there are some steps, some initiative being done to be able to rescue this boy child, to be able to empower this boy child. But I want to ask ourselves, how did the boy child get to this level?
Amazing. Interesting question, Mr. Paul. And of course, basically the main talk in the streets all over is that, we need to empower the boy child, we need to be there for the boy child.
Yes.
So that informs us that there is acknowledgement of the problem that is existing. But of course, I don't know if many of us have taken time to understand the historical background of this problem.
And that is very important. Yes. That is very, very important. Because people don't understand. They just look at the surface. Sure. And a lot of assumption. But you have mentioned something very, very important. That we need to understand the genesis of this. Please take us through.
Very true, Paul. There is a history behind the distortion, let me call it that,
yes,
of the position of the boy in the society worldwide.
Yes.
And the problem can be traced from very early ages. And we can quote examples.
Yes.
And I'll start by giving you an example of the First and the Second World Wars.
Wow. So this thing has not just started recently?
No, at all.
We are going back to the history.
Far from it.
Wow.
We are going back in ages,
yes,
even further than that, but we are just giving a few examples
okay,
for the understanding of our viewers and listeners.
Yes.
The fact is, the challenging issues that face the boy today rose from times in our history and in the history of civilization of man.
Yes.
And I've quoted a very good example of the First and the Second World Wars, where mainly those who participated in the war, the soldiers, were men. And of course, we know that millions of soldiers and millions of men died during those wars. And when men died, therefore, we must appreciate that most of them were fathers. And therefore, we must see that there was a gap that was left.
Okay.
And they had families. They had sired boys.
Yes.
And so the boys were left without
fathers.
Without fathers, without mentors, without someone to look to,
yes,
to look up to. And therefore, because of that gap, because of the gap of lacking someone they could call a father, someone they could look up to,
yes,
there was a gap that was created. And of course, the process of restoration was quite long and costly at the same time.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
So it's going beyond what we can see today. It is a deep-rooted problem that we can trace back in history. Yes.
So, Mr. Paul, where did the rain started beating this boy child? How did he become forgotten to be where he is today? Please help us understand this.
Wow, that is a very paramount issue that we must explore if we try to understand the current problem that we have. And I'm looking far in history. For example,
yes,
if you go to Europe during the First World War from 1914, all the way to the Second World War of 1939 to 1945, that season, that is in the 20th century.
Yes.
And you're going to understand that the problems that the boy faces today has a historical perspective.
Wow. So this is the genesis.
It is. And many more happenings that happened in history in the world all over before we come home here to Africa and to Kenya.
Yes.
So the issue is, if you look, for example, during the World War, a lot of the soldiers were men. You know that?
Yes.
And therefore, during the war, we know millions of people lost their lives. Mostly the soldiers who are fighting in the battlefield.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
So those men were fathers. They had sired families.
Yes.
And therefore, when they died, you can see a vacuum was created.
Even when they were taken from Africa to go and participate in the war.
Exactly.
So they left their wives and children and their boys without a father.
Absolutely.
Wow.
We're going to come to that.
Okay.
But let me take you a bit far to Europe. And we see the deaths of these soldiers, the fathers who had sons. And now when they died, something came up, something that is very critical.
Yes.
One of the consequences of these wars was that the role of women changed. How did these roles change? For example, women now became the heads of their households.
Because the husbands are no longer there.
Very good.
Okay.
Very good. So now the women assumed the roles of the fathers.
Yes.
But you know, of course, and we are going to appreciate that in the course of our discussion,
Yes.
the fact that even when women can nurture, the women themselves are not men.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
So I'd like you to appreciate, and our viewers to appreciate, the fact that the vacuum created by the death of these men and the assumption of the roles of the men by their wives who were left after the war is a major problem to this boy who was looking up to the father who is no longer there. It's a major challenge.
Either he's dead or he has gone to the war.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So the man is not available to mentor this boy.
Yes.
And although he's receiving a lot of nurturing, a lot of care from the mother, a vacuum exists. He has no one to look up to.
Yes.
And he cannot see the father act because, you know, some of these things from early childhood, these children will learn from what they see more than what we tell them.
They tell them.
So that posed a major, major crisis. And of course, it disrupted the social status and the family setup.
Wow.
Because now the father is not there, the mother has assumed the role of the father. And of course, this boy is lacking mentorship from the father.
So the structure, what you're telling us, Mr. Paul, is that the structure, how the traditional how the structure was put up to mentor this boy.
Sure.
You know, because I remember that the boy in the olden days, the boy was not just for the family, he was for the society. And everyone was very keen to nurture this boy because they knew that this would become the soldier, this would become the protector of the clan, this would become the leader, the chief, and what have you. So this structure was disrupted.
I mean, that's a very interesting observation you have made, Mr. Paul. And let me now bring you home, away from you.
And I'm loving this, Mr. Paul, Mr. Paul. The discussion is very nice.
You know, the issue here, in fact, concerns us here at home, of course, in Kenya. But if you look at the history of Africa and, of course, the issue of slavery and slave trade that happened here before the coming of colonialists, you will notice something very important and interesting, that although the figures are not agreed, we have about 25 million able-bodied African men who were sold into slavery during the transatlantic trade. Right? Most of them acquired from West Africa, although some were acquired as far as East Africa. The truth is, that's a very huge number looking at the time when the trade happened. 25 million men.
Wow.
And not just fathers,
yes.
able-bodied men. Again, like we had said, it disrupted the social and the family setting, where we knew that traditionally it was the work of the man to provide, work of the man to even provide security to the family, and of course, to be there to see and to give leadership to his family and society at large. Don't you forget we had what we call the councils of elders, the chiefdoms, the kingdoms. All these leadership structures had a man somewhere in position.
Exactly.
And therefore the disruption that came with the slavery and slave trade, and the fact that most of the men were sold as slaves in the US and in Europe, created a major vacuum in the manner in which the boy child was being mentored.
So Mr. Paul said the dynamics of bringing up a boy changed at that point.
Absolutely.
And now the mother has to wear the heart of a man and of that of a woman.
Sure.
What is the impact of this to the psychology of this boy?
That's also a very weighty issue to discuss. That, of course, the absence of the father has a major psychological impact on this boy. because, you know, like we have said, observation is one method which is very strong in learning.
Yes.
So when this boy does not have anyone to observe, even imitating some of the things that the fathers do, you know, children do that, imitating their parents.
Yes.
Yes, he has no one to imitate. And of course, the mother has taken a bigger burden. So of course, we see if the mother is there and the women are there, we have a model of even nurturing the girl. So that remained a bit intact. But now, because the mother is burdened for taking, actually overburdened for even taking up the roles of the father,
yes,
that is where the neglect, I may call it, of the boy's welfare began, especially here in our own times in Africa.
And now we see that trickling down to where we are today. Because the moment that boy lacked a father figure, lacked an authority, lacked where he could get his identity, right? So he grew with that vacuum, and this boy gave birth to sons. And by giving birth to sons, he had to give what he never had. And what was he supposed to give? Nothing. Right? And now these boys also grew, became fathers of sons, and they had to mentor the boys. And so that's why you see a man who has sons, but he doesn't have anything to give these boys. He can't sit them down and give them counsel, give them guidance, because this man is operating from a point of deficit. And now Mr. Paul has helped us to understand this clearly, that it is started from way back when these men were taken from the structure or the structure that was built by the traditions on how to mentor the boy child. Wow. Sure. I had not seen it from that angle.
Yes, it is deeper, Paul.
This is very, very serious.
It is.
Wait.
Deep-rooted in our history.
Wow.
And the historical events that have taken place in the world, including in Kenya. And our very own example of colonization.
Yes.
The coming of the Europeans, the disruption of the African culture. These are things that have affected the present day Kenya. So before we understand now the problems and the challenges affecting us now, it is always very important to look at where we have come from, our history.
Yes.
And some of the events historically that may have affected and shaped the way things are today. It's very important.
Wow.
Yes.
You know, I was doing a little bit of research, and I realized that when the white man came to Africa, all right, his target was the man. Because the man had built, remember the man was the custodian of the norms and history and the way of life of the family and of the society. So it was through attacking the man that this white man could get through the community, all right? And therefore, he had to disrupt that. And he knew by disrupting this man, he could get his way very easily into the Africans and distract everything. What? Wow! So
amazing.
This is just amazing.
I mean,
I want to hold that thought. Let us take a short break, and then we shall come back with much more. Don't touch that dial.
Amazing.
Hello, my name is Paul Wangali, a counseling psychologist, a passionate mentor, a corporate trainer, and an author. Do you know what? I have written 4 books. My first book is Time Management for Winning Grades. My second book is Sex and Teenagers. My third book is Becoming a Man. And my latest book is Why You Marry Wrong. You can get a copy of this book by calling this number 0715-629877, and we shall be able to send to you a parcel across the country. Or you can visit Nuria Online Bookstore at Nairobi, Bazaar Building, 11th floor, room number 115. Knowledge is power. Ensure you get a copy of this book.